Hi everyone, my name's Leanne Hudson. I am part of Cheyenne's tribe as the peer mentor, and today we are going to talk about marketing. So, what is marketing? How does it work? And why is it important? In business, and every single business will use marketing at some point or another. Business people use it to ensure that whatever they're selling, whether it be a service or a product, it sells. And better yet, it sells to the right people. This is what we call a targeted audience or an audience or a primary audience that we want to see buy our product. So, normally, when we're thinking about a product, we are designing it for a specific person or a specific type of people. So, if we think about a food, for instance, or certain personal products, we're designing those to be for someone in particular. So marketing is crucial because without marketing our product or service, it's not going to receive the attention that it needs to sell. And this could also determine how successful your business is overall, because if we're not selling the product or the service, you're not making money, and therefore your business isn't able to move forward. And sometimes we might even see businesses not be able to survive because we're not seeing the product sell. So marketing can be done in really traditional manners, but it can also be done in modern manners. And we're going to talk about what the difference is between those traditional ways and some of the ways that we see today, and some that are still developing because of all of our new technology that's available for us. So there's four peers of marketing. The first is to know your audience. That's what I was just talking about. You want to zoom in on who your primary audiences are. So this can be more than one group of people. Once you have that one group determined, then you're going to think about all your secondary audiences. So these are the people that are next in line, that might think your product's great, might be more apt to use your product or service, and also the people that are willing to share your product and advertise for you. So I also said, we've talked a lot about product, and it's really important that you know what you're selling. So you need to know your brand, which means not just the color or the font or the pictures that you share, but rather the attitudes and beliefs that you want your brand to promote. So do you want your brand to be very dark and very more intimidating, or do you want your brand to be very like carefree and open and sunshine and rainbows? So you kind of have to think about what you want your brand to look like, and then you want to reflect that in your product, and you really want to know that product well. So you want to know it in a way that nobody else does. You want to know the back and the forth, and you want to know perhaps if it has ingredients, you want to know those. You want to know how your product works, why it works the way it does, etc., etc. After that, like I mentioned before, you can either take a traditional approach or a modern approach to marketing. So the difference is that traditional is more like print, face-to-face conversations, he said, she said kind of thing, where the modern model brings in a lot of new technology such as social media. And social media is such a big marketing tool today, but it's important to understand that marketing isn't just social media, because today we think of our socials as like the main way that we promote things. But that's not true, because there's all these different audiences, and social media only reflects one of those audiences. Okay, so newspapers and articles and those face-to-face conversations are also still really, really important. So it's not like they've gone out of style or they're obsolete. So I like to take the approach that you will see marketing in a way of traditional and modern mixed together. And depending on what your product or service is, of course, this will take different ways. So if I'm selling a piece of furniture, for instance, I'm going to sell it online and make an ad online, but I'm also going to maybe put my store or business's ad in the newspaper. I'm going to make sure I have a website. I'm going to make sure that I'm posting on my socials, all these different things that we can do. So, for example, like I was just kind of mentioning a few things. So, marketing examples. So, it's like I said, it's not just social media content. However, social media content is a really important piece of the puzzle now, because we're seeing so many people gravitating towards their socials. So, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, or even like websites and things like that. So, it's really important to utilize those online tools because they're at our fingertips. And for the most part, they're free advertising, or you can get really, really cheap paid subscriptions, which is great. Social media content is so diverse, but it's also really important that you're still thinking about those audiences while using it because social media can be really broad, or we think of it as very broad, but you still need to be able to nail down who you want to target while using it. So do you want to target young demographic people, or would you like to target specific communities and regions? And these are all tools that you can do and set up on your socials, but you just need to take the time and really think about who you want to see what stuff. And you can make it different because some people will have different desires than others. And then we have just advertisements. So you can have advertisements everywhere. So your social media is not just about advertising. So you also need to build those customer and employee relationships. You need to build relationships with that audience because without those relationships, the advertisements won't go very far. So having those advertisements, like I said, you can have them across all different channels, whether it be your socials or your website. Um, you could have it as pop-up ads or cookies, we call them. You can have them in different places. And like I said, if you know your audiences, then you'll know how to better adapt to that. You also can have marketing schemes like sales and promotions. So when we think of sales and promotions, we think like 20% off or buy one, get one, or incentives. And that's really important, especially for new businesses. It's really important that they have those incentives, or customers have those incentives to buy in. And then if they're happy, they're going to turn around and use one of our traditional marketing methods of a face-to-face conversation, the he said, she said situation, and then they'll come back and maybe they'll bring their friends too. So then the next example for marketing is price point. It's really important that you're not marketing something that's way out of the trend. You have to do a market analysis and really determine where your product fits, if it's the right price point, is it the right design, is it really going to be useful, is there things that could be done to make it better, and then you need to make sure that your price is on par with everything else. So let's just jump back here for a second. So modern marketing, like I said, it's not just using social media, but it is one of the most important tools today. So for the most part, it is free, or it could be free. So for instance, you can do several parts of content creation online for free using different apps and subscriptions. But you also have the option to pay into these same subscriptions and websites and app designs, that'll allow you to advance your content. Then there's also things like social media that we know can be free, but you also can pay into it as a business to increase your views, to increase your activity and engagement. So businesses can use this tool to share their product with other people too. So then we have the more traditional model. And like I said, traditional models are not out to date. They're not something that we don't use or hear of, because I still see people advertising in the newspaper, and I still see people talking with their friends or their peers or their family about things that they bought or where they bought the service, etc. So it's really important that you have this mix of these two models while you're selling something like a service or a product. So it's also important that you know your audience. And I know I'm repetitive with this, but it is really important that you know your audience when you're trying to market something. So you need to think of questions like, who are you speaking to? Who's going to buy this product or service? And what do you want them to see? Or what do you have to offer to them? Because if they're happy, they're going to come back. But if they're not happy, chances are they're not going to look at you again. So here is a quick thing that we're going to look at. So these are what we call the 4 Ps of marketing. So those are all four different things, but they're also extremely important. So we've already touched on product and price, and we started to talk about promotion through advertising and sales, but it's also important that we consider the fourth P. So we've done the product, we've done the price, we talked a little bit of promotion, and now we're going to talk about place. So when we talk about place, I'm talking about, is your service or product in a place that it can grow, expand, but also is it in a region that it will be able to do those things? So is it somewhere that is appropriate? Have you thought about the people that are in that region where your product's available? Is it somewhere that people are going to be really drawn to that product, or is it somewhere that maybe isn't the right fit? And those are all questions that are super important to consider when you're thinking about your placement of your product. And that doesn't necessarily just mean region, but it also means, is it in a place where it could grow and expand if you wanted it to? So now we'll talk a little bit about strategy, just to end off here. So we're going to keep thinking about our audience. Preach it, preach it, preach it. Audience is so crucial. And then we're also going to think about the brand you want your business to have. So like I said, it's not just about the colors and the font of your business, but it's also about what kind of messaging you want your business to portray. And you want to reflect that within your marketing strategy. You also need to spend time on this marketing strategy. It's not something that will happen overnight. It's not something you just draw up on paper and never change again. It's always developing and growing, maybe changing. You're making edits to it to make sure it's as effective as possible. And then you're going to make sure that it's always a priority. So whether you have staff or employees, or whether you are a staff or employee, your marketing strategy should be reflected within those people. So they need to be on board and understand what's happening. And that needs to be the business owner's priority to ensure that happens. So we'll just take a look at this graphic here. So it talks about some of the things we talked about. So management, that's what I just talked about. So having management of that strategy is really important. Offline integration is just as important as our social media and our website design, those online techniques. Offline integration is so important. So that's your customer to customer or your business to customer relationships that are being built in person, but also online through text and medias. Super important. Through marketing, you'll also see your traffic improve. So you'll see more people accessing your product and services, or you hope to. And then we also want to pay really close attention to conversation, because conversation is a huge part of marketing. It's usually underrepresented, but it is super important that you're always considering how powerful that conversation can be. And lastly, we'll talk about planning. So this right here is planning. So when you're having a business or starting a business, or maybe you're part of a business as an employee, making sure that you're constantly planning for the future. So planning for future engagements, planning for what the future could look like for your product or service. Can it grow? Can it expand? Can it reach different audiences? All these things are important to plan for and think about. As you move through your business, but also as you grow your marketing strategy. So that's it for marketing. Be sure to take a review through if you missed any little bits and pieces. But if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, and my email is there as well.